Hey friends, it's Chris Larson. Hope you're doing great. Just taking a break from doors because I feel like I've been having the same kind of conversation about the governor's race and just Democratic politics in the state. And I thought, I try to be pretty transparent about what's going on. Have at it. This is what's going on. So I've posted a bit more, and people have commented that it's out of character that I'm going after Governor Evers. And that I've gone after kind of Executive Crowley and kind of the more establishment Dems. Well, this is what's going on, and here's why. The governor's race is for a long time been a Francesca Hong winning, right? And for a while there were people who were explaining away, which some of it was real observations, which is like early polls like don't mean all that much. Things can change, things can shift. But know this, and I think there's things worth remembering. Fran has never been down in a poll. Francesca Hong has never been down in a poll in the Democratic primary ever. And so the latest continue to show her winning. There is not a poll that shows that she is not winning in the Democratic primary. And there's a question about what happens with Tiffany thereafter. The reality is all of those are within the margin of error as well. So as people are freaking out and saying, look, she's down or she's up or this person's up more, all of these are within the margin of error. These are not actual questions asked of every voter in the state. They're polls, so they have a variance. But people wanted to say, okay, maybe she doesn't have this path, which is fine. We have a Democratic primary. That makes sense. The last few weeks after Fran suddenly, after I believe it was Sarah Rodriguez's campaign imploded, at that point there was not really any clear chance for anybody to be able to catch Fran. I think at that point maybe one of the other folks, Mandela Barnes, Kelda Roys, could have made a break for it. Maybe Joel Brennan could pick up some steam, but mostly Kelda or Mandela could at that point have gone in, and it would have been a great race. Frankly, you would have had a 3-person race, and I'm friends with all 3 of them. I think they're all pretty great. They're great on policy. They think about it, and they have the solutions that actually solve the problems that we've got. What happened next is just the weirdest thing, right? And that's where Tony Evers decided to endorse a candidate who had already dropped out. At which point, it did not make any sense of why he was rallying in that, and frankly, it helped Francesca Hong. If he had endorsed Mandela or Kelda, who could have been picking up steam, then perhaps there would have been a chance. But he chose a candidate who had never been polling above 4%, and frankly was not picking up steam, and did not have a clear vision of what he wanted to be doing with the state of Wisconsin. So that, I think, was part of people's frustration that the establishment is coming in to try and stomp on the progressives' chance of winning. But the odd part thereafter was the attacks by Governor Evers, and they were a very specific kind of attack that has me concerned, which is he's saying that she can't win because of her policies or because of her tweets, and then saying, oh no, she's going to lose, that's why I'm involved. I know best as the governor, with no proof, with nothing to validate that. Again, all the polls have showed her within the margin of error of Tom Tiffany. This is a year where we're running against the craziest of Republicans, just the blatant, for whatever the Republican Party had been in the past, now it's a party of corruption and greed and destruction of services that people rely on in the public. Exploitation of our natural resources and turning the country over to scam artists and people looking to rip us off. And that's not just the Trump family. That's basically it. The billionaires, big tech, people who want data centers. And people are pissed. Left, right, and center, people are pissed because one thing, it's like, that's just what's happening in government. That doesn't affect me. But in this way, it does, because all of a sudden our taxes are going to be going up. We have to pay for a war that nobody wanted, that we're losing. And it has cost us lives on our side, as well as civilian lives, killing an entire school full of girls, pissing off the rest of the world, pissing off our allies and alienating us. And on top of that, everything's getting more expensive. people aren't looking after each other anymore, because the now attitude from the president is of greed and self-service, and frankly the government that is supposed to serve the people and solve the biggest problems that we have is no longer doing that. You have to watch out for what the government's doing in a very real way with what is happening with ICE, of masked agents who are not being held accountable in any way. And the FBI has just come out and said they're no longer investigating any type of problems with ICE. So green light to violence by the government on the people at a time where things are getting worse and worse and worse. If all of that isn't enough, we have the election coming up, and people are worried that there's going to be people to try and stop them. Part of that is what Trump is trying to do by restricting who can actually vote, calling into question election certainty. Elections are how we solve things in our beautiful country. We have a democratic republic. We choose people to represent us. After everybody votes, then they're supposed to get together and figure things out. Trying to break that breaks the foundation of what is supposed to work for the people. And unfortunately, this is happening to serve the rich, to serve the wealthy, to serve special interests. And there's a chance to break it with an election, okay? This election in Wisconsin is a chance to break that. Francesca Hong represents policies that actually solve the problems to their core. These are bills that I co-authored with her. She understands the scope of the problem because she has lived it. And instead of embracing the full spectrum of a life that she has lived, people are going after her and saying, she had credit card debt. She was tweeting. She tweeted things. Can you believe it? Things that are unpopular. But read her policies. Spend half as much time reading her policies as you do paying attention to the people freaking out about off-color tweets. And by the way, if you've ever been online for any amount of time, please tell me that you are prepared to defend every single thing that you have ever posted before you start to come for somebody who is younger and running for office. Otherwise, this is going to keep happening if we are expecting people who grew up in an egg that incubates candidates with no access to social media. You're gonna have some pretty weird people running for office, man, because everybody at this point has been online and posted stuff that they're like, that probably wasn't a good idea. So unless you're prepared to defend absolutely every thing you've ever done and bring your receipts, okay, defend every dumb thing you've ever done. But they're going after her for those things, not talking about her policies, not talking about the policies that I co-authored with her that say very, very important things that solve the problem, including every child should be fed. Kids shouldn't go hungry. Beyond that, you should make sure every child is treated equally and gets access to a quality public education, right? Making sure we have access to affordable health care, that you don't go bankrupt when you get sick. Who wants that? It's pretty extreme on the other side of these, right? Let kids go hungry. Some kids are better than others. And you don't deserve health care if you don't have the correct job. Your life isn't valued as much. This goes on about the other things, affordable childcare so that people can actually afford to have kids and can make choices for their family, not based off of a system that's in need of reform. Tacking on data centers is probably one of the biggest, and frankly, holding private voucher schools accountable to the same level of accountability as public schools and winding them down over time are probably the two biggest that get us to where we are right now, where the Democratic Party is, most of the people in the Democratic Party do not agree with those positions. Voters. So on vouchers, they want public dollars to have public accountability and go to public schools primarily to solve those problems, because they give every child what they're able to need. Dividing it into two systems, one that can kick out kids, take the kids they want, keep the money, and not have any of the same levels of accountability in terms of teacher licensure, in terms of taking the same tests and having the same oversight from the public. Having the same type of a curriculum that is a universal standard. these are just the basic things that they should have, and they don't. And it's been going on for a long time. So that one is another breaking point within the Democratic Party, that a majority of voters support, but special interests have a lot of money on the voucher side. Data centers. Data centers are opposed by 76% of voters in the latest Marquette poll, right? That is huge. And that's not just the left, that's not just the middle, that's left, right, and center. People oppose data centers because of all of the problems that they've got, because of these, like, who, if you invented these things, people, you'd have to wonder, hey, why do you want a job-killing, water-wasting, loud machine that was going to go out of date every 5 years, and in exchange turn over your land and natural resources, and they're going to take a tax cut too, $2 billion to do that? Why wouldn't you want these job-killing, water-wasting machines that are built for, mass surveillance by a increasingly authoritarian government? Wow, people are opposed. Find something in that sampler platter of what you're opposed to. That's how you get to such a high number of people opposed to it. Except the people in office are very much letting these things happen. And part of that is part of the base of the Democratic Party, which the Republican Party, of course, is very much in bed with big tech, and they're not going to do a damn thing about data centers. They're not doing anything against big tech. They'll say the right things. They know how to run the focus groups on what to say, but their policies aren't there. Tom Tiffany is not doing anything to oppose these. He had a chance in Congress. They have all the levers of power at the national level. So all the things that Tom Tiffany is saying he's going to do, he can do. Data centers, he just knows that he needs to say it. But Francesca Hall and others, I believe there was 7 of us who signed on to a bill saying pause to protect. The original bill that all Democrats signed on to, we saw was not enough because these things are happening already. NDAs are being signed. People are opposing these over and over, but their local governments have already been bought in. If you want to know why that is, part of it is because they're striving towards net new construction, which is how the state set up its tax base to say if you actually want to raise property taxes and get new revenue while the state is starving you, if you want to build past what the state has given you, you can only do that if you have new construction in your area. That was something that came under the Walker era. So they have the incentive to do that, to be able to get more of a tax base. So local governments have been eager to build whatever it is that they possibly can just to hit that artificial net new construction. Frankly, something that we can and should repeal at the state, and people don't know enough about it. We should be doing other things with that. Preservation of green space, public devotion, actually serving the public if you want to go above and beyond. But just the sake of building for the sake of building is a weird metric, right? But that is why they're moving towards these data centers. Data centers are picking people off. Big tech is picking off community by community. I don't think I need to go into why these things are really bad. I'll just say that 4 of them in the state are going to be using more energy than the rest of the state combined. They are going to drive up your energy bills. They are going to prolong the energy use of fossil fuels, if not build more fossil fuel infrastructure. At a time where climate change is in crisis, is continuing to get worse. We continue to have the hottest of summers after the hottest of summers, and wildfires are eviscerating our landscape and polluting our air. We could do things about this. Other countries have done something about that. They've done things about all the things that I've mentioned. Other states too. So we're not way behind. These are not unsolvable problems. But there's a lot of money being spent. And so within the Democratic Party, there is a broad coalition, and there are those, same with the vouchers in private schools, there are those who see that there's a lot of money being spent and there's a lot of money coming in. And unfortunately, for when we as elected officials have to choose who we are representing, our elected constituents, there is a new set of folks that we have to think about within that, and that is donors. Not something we should be thinking about at all, but raising money is now the biggest and most important thing about recruiting most candidates. this is a problem because it tilts the playing field towards money. So if you're wondering why we have not had data center regulations when the vast majority of the public is looking for that, it is because both parties right now are getting a whole heck of a lot of money from big tech to just let this happen. That's not for everybody. And I know that there are some Republicans who understand this because I've had conversations with them, including those in elected office. But it's a lot harder to speak up over on their side because Donald Trump will stick a violent Jan 6er on you. So they all stay in line, especially when he's offering them bribe money to do it. But on the Democratic side, there are folks who want to pause and say, let's pause to protect, or as Francesca Hong puts it, Control, Alt, Delete, to control the building of these and then set an alternate plan moving forward. I'm botching her. She does it better than me, which is why she's our nominee. But actually putting in the plans, putting in the protocols for what data centers have to do and how they have to be built. That is why there was the joint effort, and the biggest money that is being spent in propping up Mr. Crowley right now is coming from the voucher folks and the data center folks, because they are worried as heck that the accountability that most of the voters want, that most Democratic voters want, that most people in the public expect and think is already there, is actually going to happen under Francesca Hong, and we'll all rally around it. We're all getting a chance to dig into what her policies are, and we're all going to get to understand those, which we will, because she is going to be the nominee after Tuesday. It's almost a mathematical certainty at this point, which, you'd think that people would understand this, which is what has me actually worried. And I apologize this video is so long, but I think that it's important to digest. And so if you've gotten this far, thank you. Maybe pause, take a snack, and come back. But I promise you I am coming to how this all comes to a head and why I am out here knocking on doors, and will be knocking on doors all weekend and trying to help candidates. And that is this. There is a real risk that if Francesca Hong is successful, that success, and frankly she can and should be, she's within the margin of error. She has a message that speaks across the political spectrum. Everybody hates data centers and what they're doing. They are not a fan of this, right? Especially as we're giving up a $2 billion tax cut. They want to see things happen with that. They want quality public education. They want the things that Francesca Hong is offering if you look at the policies. So instead, if she is successful and she does these things, it will show that people who are solution-oriented, and it may be some people will say, on the left or liberal or whatever, or use the labels. I think the labels obfuscate the fact that Francesca Hong has solutions that actually meet the moment that we are in and understand it. And I encourage you to check them out. The other ones are the other things that people are saying are just like, nibbling around the edges. And if Francesca Hong wins, the same way that she can, if we push and we push past what I'm about to tell you, then we can show that we can actually govern and actually get good policies and get good people in office without the aid of all that dark money. And what that means, that suddenly this is a democratic republic again, and people will be represented in government again. And this scares the crap out of the moneyed interests. This scares the crap out of Wall Street, big tech, big pharma, all of them. Because if we have control of government for the people, we can actually start to solve the biggest problems once again. This is why they were freaking out about Mamdani in New York. This is why they were freaking out about Al-Sayed in Michigan. And this is why they worked really hard to cut off Bernie Sanders and his ascendant rise in 2016, and then again in 2020. If somebody on the left who doesn't rely on big money is getting into power and can prove that it works and government can work, that calls into question this rigged system as it is in all the bad money in politics. So what I worry about as I've been thinking about this is this, that if Tony Evers and David Crowley are in this and they know that they cannot win mathematically, they're just doing it to throw divide and division and spread doubt about Francesca Hong, freak out about tweets and whatever, without actually talking about the policy. This makes it easier for the rest of the country, and some folks in the States say, well, we're just going to have to take a loss on this one. We're going to take the L. And we absolutely cannot let that happen. As goes Wisconsin, goes the nation. We are the closest swing state in the country. We cannot let that happen. And there are going to be people who are starting, will say that a lot louder, and it's already starting. So I stopped to record this because this is the fight that we absolutely have to push back and win. Everybody should unite. Anybody that is talking smack about other candidates, once that candidate becomes a nominee, should be out there and eat that shit sandwich for everything that they said. And if they do not, and say, yeah, here's these things and here's how what they're planning on doing is better, then they're part of the plan to try and shut this thing down and make sure that the people can never win at the ballot box again. So this is big, considering the moment that we are in. I believe Francesca Hong can win not just the primary but the governorship this November. I have believed that everybody who is in the race could win. We are running against greed incarnate. And Tom Tiffany, who is not doing a darn thing and voted to throw out the 2020 election, does not trust the voters, and frankly has already said that he would reward the January Sixers with a $1.8 billion slush fund. He doesn't see a problem with that's something that could happen, and a host of other bad policies. We can and will win. We can and must win, and work together to do that. So this is what's at stake. This is why I'm out here knocking on doors for a local candidate who's pushing against data centers and against big money. David Liner's my friend. I hope we're successful there. That's where I'm spending my weekend, going door to door and talking to neighbors until my voice goes hoarse. And it is a Democratic primary, and I've gotten some grief about it. And frankly, that's what triggered me to realize why this is so important. And that was when I went in for a Labor Council interview a few weeks ago. I have been a friend of labor and the workers my entire career. When I went in, I expected attacks. I don't expect everyone to love me. But there was attacks about supporting data centers, which I've expected. I've been clear on my stances for a long time. And they said, well, don't worry, these are temporary jobs. There's all kinds of temporary jobs. And I was trying to explain that these are going to eliminate all jobs. That's the goal. They're not there yet. It's a promise they're doing to try and leverage investment. Very successful. Over $1 trillion of spending, $50 billion of return. Do the math on that, whether that makes sense. And that's not a bubble. But they were like, well, it's money. We should be in favor of this. But and then they said, well, these are going to aid in mass surveillance. And they said, well, they're watching you anyways. What's the problem with that? I have a pretty big problem with that. But then it was the other folks in the room who said that we have to do this. We have to stand with those who are building the data centers out of labor solidarity. And that kind of took me aback, because making sure workers have the ability to unite for better wages, better benefits, better treatment in the workplace, and just a better balance. Labor over capital is the purpose of labor unions. And yes, it's important to have solidarity, but to build these job-killing, water-wasting machines didn't make sense to me. And now that I'm thinking about it, this is a huge part of that problem, which is, again, why we must win this fight. It is pro-labor to be pro-worker and to be against data centers. And there is a lot of money trying to be spent to say otherwise. There is a lot of money to try and throw at against Francesca Hong to get people to be divided. I will say, as soon as we can be getting united, the better. I am throwing it back at Governor Evers and David Crowley at the same way they are throwing it at our side. And I think that's appropriate. And if they are successful, we move forward. But this is about a much bigger fight here in Wisconsin, and we absolutely have to win. We absolutely need to be engaged, not just through the August 11th primary, but through the general election. Again, there's a lot packaged in here. I didn't sit down here expecting to record a 24-minute video, but I've had this conversation so much over and over, and after each one, I think, how do I get this out to folks? Can I write? Can I put it out like that? And I hope that I do. I might. The problem is I'm not sitting in one place. I'm out knocking on doors, which I'm just about to go head back and do. So that I hope that this makes sense to you. If there's something that I reference that you don't understand, please let me know. If I don't see it in the comments, I don't live in the comments. Sorry, trolls. Send a message and I'll keep an eye out for that and try to clarify as we're moving forward. I'm recording this on Friday, just a couple hours before sunset. So I'll keep an eye on it. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Keep pushing back. And it's okay to have hope in the face of such cynicism and the face of such hopelessness. It is a bold and fearless act to really believe that we can and do deserve a better community, a better state, and beyond. So be the good that you want out in the world, and don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it. Hong is hope. Let's work together and make it happen. Thank you.